Hello and welcome back to another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews. I've been on a brief hiatus because I was fighting pneumonia, but now I'm pretty much over it, feeling much better, and getting back to some kind of nostalgic guns. This particular model, I think, was probably the second 22 long rifle that I ever purchased. This particular one is a Glenfield Model 60, which is made by Marlin. This gun dates back to the year 1980, so it's a couple years older than me, and it has some pretty nice features built into it. So Marlin offered these in a lot of different variations. This particular one comes with a birch stock or a beech stock. I think it's actually birch. The wood on this one is just plain. They made a lot of these that had like squirrel scenes stamped into the wood or checkering, but this one is just your base model. And the reason I wanted this particular one, this has the 22-inch barrel with the full-length magazine tube, and it has the JM marked barrel, which anybody who knows Marlin rifles know that the JM model barrels are a lot more desirable. They're just better made guns. And this has that 16 lands and grooves micro grooving in it. This one being the full-length barrel and the full-length mag tube, this holds 18 plus 1 rounds of 22 long rifle. Another good feature about the Marlin 60 is that it has dual extractors on the bolt, and it has a 3/8 dovetail machined right into the receiver, so it's very easy to add a scope onto it. Now, this has kind of a self-contained feed and hammer mechanism. They're a little bit annoying sometimes. They have a lot of small parts in them, but they work really well. They are definitely more complicated than what you'd see in a Ruger 1022, but as long as you keep these things nice and clean, they typically work pretty well. The nylon buffers that these came with from the factory were pretty terrible, and they were prone to cracking over time. So I've purchased a couple of these 3D printed soft buffers, which should fix the problem of having that buffer disintegrate over time. One of the other issues that people have with these is the ejector wire gets bent if you try to reinsert the trigger assembly or this feed mechanism into the bottom of the action with the bolt closed. You will definitely bend that thing. So make sure the bolt is locked open when you do put these back together. And again, here you can see the parts that were messed up on this particular model. That buffer is all cracked and destroyed. And on this particular one, the trigger housing was actually broken. The rear tail was broken off of it. It did have some incorrect screws on there, so maybe somebody over tightened it and snapped that tail off at one point in time. One other thing I noticed about this particular model, that it had a worn out and bent recoil spring. So I do have a new recoil spring coming in from M Carbo, as well as a new ejector wire as well. I did purchase this replacement trigger assembly and a buffer on eBay, and I did swap the parts back into that, but I do need to get the matching screws for that trigger housing. And again, the barrel and crown on this thing was very filthy when I purchased it. But the whole point I wanted to make this video, these rifles, you can find them, again, in pawn shops, in the used section of gun shops, and you can get them for really good deals. This one I think I paid $200 for. You can get these even cheaper a lot of times. I've seen them down as low as $125 to $150 in some cases. But this one being an older model, it does not have a last shot hold open. You can slide the bolt back and push in on the charging handle and it locks into the receiver. But again, it doesn't have a last shot hold open. And really the last shot hold open, it's nice, but at the same time, it does complicate it. And here we have some footage from the other Marlin 60s that I've owned over the years. I had an original blued model and I had a stainless steel model. The bolt and everything inside of the Marlin 60 is a lot more complex than a 1022. So I understand the simplicity aspect of it for the 1022 being a little bit easier to take apart and clean. I've gotten pretty good at taking these apart, so I'm not really that concerned about it. So I got another 14 rounds. Let's see how many I can get this time. So thanks again for joining me on another quick edition of Cranky Gun Reviews. This has been just a brief discussion on an old Glenfield Marlin Model 60. Again, don't pass up these guns if you see them in the shop. They take very little work to get up and running again if they do have problems. You really just have to need to know how to take them apart and clean them properly and what parts to look for to make sure that you're not wearing out the internals in this gun prematurely by having a broken buffer or having a bad recoil spring. So thanks again for watching. Have a great day. God bless America. Support your 2A rights. Get out there and shoot. And you remember, if someone asks you to give up some of your freedom for the greater good, remind them that freedom is the greater good.